I want to start by removing the wheel. I'm going to use a little pry bar and just very gently pry the hubcap off. Of course, if you don't have this, then don't worry about it. There we go. Hold it because it likes to go flying. Set that aside, and then with a 21mm socket, remove all 5 of your lug nuts and then remove the wheel. Towards the front, there's a little 10mm bolt that holds on the e-brake cable. I actually want to remove this so I can get more slack out of the cable. A lot of times these break, so be careful with them. There we go, now we have more slack. With a 14mm socket, let's remove these 2 bolts that hold the caliper onto the bracket. There's one. Number 2. Pull the caliper right off. Sometimes if you press it on the piston side, that'll compress the piston just a smidge. And I just want to get this up and out of the way for now. Let's continue by removing the pads. 2 more 14mm bolts right here. Just going to break these free by hand first, and then I'll get my air gun in here. Okay, remove your caliper bracket, set it aside, and remove the rotor. Now if you look at this hub surface, it's a little bit dirty and it's got some raised areas from rust. So you can take a wire brush and scrape it, make it nice and flat, or a sanding disc. You'll see in the next clip I'll be replacing this for a different video, but basically you want to clean it up, make it nice and flat so the new rotor has a flat surface to sit on, otherwise you'll get braking issues. Let's apply anti-seize to the inside of the hub area here, or the hub surface, I guess. This will help rust from not building up in the future. It'll help the rotor not to stick. All right, let's clean up the caliper bracket. I'm going to start with the slider pins. Take them out one at a time. The reason that is because one of them, this one in this particular case, has a rubber sleeve on it, and it's important that you put that one back right where it came from. Mine are not rotted or rusted or stuck in there, so I'm just going to clean off the old grease and put new grease on, and that should be good. But if yours were for some reason stuck, you'd want to get a bore brush, clean the hole in there, and then obviously either replace or put this in a wire wheel and clean it up. I'm actually going to clean that little ridge in there. You can see there's rust buildup and there's more than I'd like, and that's what seals up against the boot. You want that nice and clean. Just for the heck of it, I pulled out this side before I actually started, and you can see there's quite a bit of rust buildup, so I'm actually going to take this one to the wire wheel too and clean it up. This is a good example of what you don't want to see. And it looks like these two both have little rubber sleeves on them, so I guess it doesn't matter when you mix them up. All right, so I have them both cleaned up. That looks a lot better. Now let's grease them up. And actually I don't only like to put grease on the slider pins, but also inside of the boot, and I'll show you in a second. I usually do that as a reserve of grease, a little bit extra, because if you put too much on the slider pins, it gets wiped off. It's important to get grease up in those little ridges. That's what helps the boot seal up. Decent glob of grease, and I like to just put it right inside of the boot. Like I said, if it gets into this little accordion piece of the boot, it acts as a reserve of grease for when it's needed. Put the slider in. We'll get the excess air out in a little bit, but I want to do this side as well. To get the excess air out, push the pin in, squeeze the boot, and as you can see, air is out. Do the same to this one. Oh, a little bit of extra grease came out, that's all right. Give these a couple spins, that way you work the grease in on this ridge, but also inside of the bore on the slider pin. These slide in and out. These slide very smoothly, so that's exactly what you want. Now let's get the anti-rattle clips off. And you want to clean up underneath here. You don't want any rust buildup. Set those aside. You can use a wire brush and just scrape it off. This one isn't actually too bad, so a wire brush should do the trick, except for these areas here where I do have some buildup. So I'm actually going to take this little grinding disc. Be very careful if you have to do this, because you don't want to grind off any material. You just want to remove the surface buildup here. That's pretty good. Let's wipe the dust and debris off. And you want to add a very thin layer of grease here. This is way too much actually. So basically you just want to coat the bare metal and prevent rust from building up in the future, but if you put too much it'll get in between here where the rotor is, and that is not good. There we go, that's perfect just like that. Now let's get the new anti-rattle clips and put those on. And you can't really mess up the way they go because they only go on one way. The important part though is that you press them down all the way. That way they're properly seated. Okay, those are fully seated on both sides. Let's get this back onto the vehicle. All right, grab your new rotor, put it on backwards. Let's wipe off the debris that's on the outside. It comes coated with oil from the factory so it doesn't rust while it sits on the shelf, but you need to get that oil off. So spray it down with brake parts cleaner and wipe it off with a rag. Now take it, flip it over, and install it the right way. Let's do the same to this outer surface here. Grab the caliper bracket, slide it over the rotor, line it up with the two bolt holes, and start in your two bolts. Once those are started, bottom them out, and then torque them to 42 foot-pounds. Now let's get the pads on. I like to put the pad with the wear indicator on the drag side. So basically as the rotor's spinning forward like this, it's going that way and it's dragging this wear indicator up and therefore making noise. If you put it on the bottom like it was when I took off, it would actually be jamming it into the brake rotor or into the pad and not making any noise for you. So I think on the top is the way to go for this. So slide this on. Your pads should slide on easily. If they don't, that means you didn't clean up the bracket enough. Okay, there we go. Moves around easily, that's perfect. The outer pad does not get a wear indicator. To retract this caliper piston, you actually have to use a special tool and you have to find the right side. For me, it's the one with the little four corners. You stick it in to these grooves and you have to twist and push in at the same time. So you're basically screwing it back in. Okay, this is working flawlessly. If there is any sort of pressure that is resisting the twist or the push, that means something's wrong. Your caliper could be bad. Oh, there we go. I think I've reached the limit right here. Straighten out the boot. Perfect. Leave it like that. Let's put just a little bit of grease on the face of the piston here. This will help the pads operate quietly and smoothly. And I'm going to put some on these two ears on the back side for the same reason. Now grab your caliper, slide it over the pads. Make sure it goes over the slider pins. Tap it on. Let's get the two bolts and bolt it up. Start the top first. It'll be easier. And then you can pivot the bottom into place. Torque these to 25 foot-pounds. Don't forget to put back the parking brake cable with this little 10mm bolt. Let's get the wheel back on. Start on all 5 of your lug nuts, snug them up, and torque them to 76 foot-pounds. Put the hubcap back on if you have one. Make sure you line up this slot with the valve stem. Where is it? Right there. Otherwise it will get crushed. Putting these on can be tricky because they usually want to pop off in other places as you put them on. There we go. Got it. All right. Take it for a road test.